Everyone rejected the orphan, except one man who gave her his name and his heart. The town was small, the kind where everyone knew everyone. Yet somehow, Aisha always felt invisible. She had grown up in the orphanage on the outskirts, a worn-down building with peeling paint and a garden that had long stopped blooming. The other children had either left long ago or had been adopted, leaving her with only the older caretakers, kind but overworked, to keep her company. Life had never been easy, and for Aisha, it had never been fair. She had learned early that the world did not welcome those who had no family, no name, and no place to belong. Every morning, she would wake before the sun, sweeping the floors and washing the dishes. The orphanage, though clean, was always cold, and the meals were simple, often just bread and tea, but it was home. She tried to keep her spirit bright, humming quietly to herself while she worked, pretending she was somewhere else, somewhere kind and warm. But as soon as she stepped outside, the world reminded her that she was different, that she did not belong. Even simple tasks became battles. At the marketplace, where other children ran errands for their parents, Aisha was met with suspicion or outright disdain. "You again?" Shopkeepers would mutter, shaking their heads. "Go away. We don't have work for you." Sometimes they handed her a few coins, but not out of kindness, out of irritation, just to make her leave. It stung more than she could put into words. She had learned to smile politely and accept the coins, but inside, a small ache grew with every rejection. At school it was no better. Though she had learned to read and write faster than many children, her classmates whispered behind her back, calling her the orphan, as if her lack of parents was a crime. Teachers tried to be fair, but even they sometimes forgot to include her, as if she were a shadow moving quietly through the classroom. She would sit at the edge of the playground during breaks, watching the other children laugh and play with their families, feeling a deep, gnawing loneliness that no words could chase away. Aisha had dreams, though she rarely voiced them. She wanted to become a teacher, to help children learn and grow, just like some of the kind women in her orphanage had helped her. She wanted to find a home, a place where she would be wanted and safe. But every day the world whispered that these dreams were impossible. She learned to be quiet, to shrink into herself, and to hope that maybe someday someone would notice her, not for what she lacked, but for who she was. One particular afternoon she overheard a conversation that hurt more than usual. Two women at the market, who she had seen many times before, were talking about a new family that had moved into town. They laughed cruelly, gossiping about how lucky these people were to have everything: wealth, family, respect. Then one of them noticed Aisha watching and sneered, "And there's the poor orphan, staring like she belongs anywhere. Don't you wish your life were different?" Aisha turned away quickly, hiding the tears that threatened to fall. She wanted to speak, to tell them she had feelings and dreams, that she was more than a label, but the words got stuck in her throat. She walked home slowly, the sun dipping low behind the hills, casting long shadows across the dusty road. Her footsteps echoed softly, reminding her how alone she truly was. That evening she sat on the small porch of the orphanage, the wind chilling her thin sweater. Around her, the world seemed to carry on without noticing her existence. She closed her eyes and imagined a life where she was accepted, where someone smiled at her without pity, where she had a name and a place to belong. For a moment, she let herself dream freely, before the cold bite of reality returned. The next day brought no relief. At the orphanage, she helped with chores, cleaned the hallways, and tended to the small garden. But even there, small reminders of her isolation existed. Letters from former children who had been adopted arrived occasionally, addressed to the orphanage, never mentioning her. Photos of smiling families decorated the walls, and every picture was a quiet reminder that she had no one to send her a note, no one to celebrate her milestones. Despite this, Aisha found small joys wherever she could. She loved reading, often sneaking into the tiny library room to lose herself in stories of faraway lands and brave heroes. She liked drawing as well, sketching little scenes of forests, rivers, and happy homes, places she had never known but imagined with vivid clarity. These small acts of creativity kept her spirit alive even when the world seemed determined to snuff it out. Sometimes she would wander the streets of the town, just walking and observing. She loved watching the way the sunlight hit the rooftops, the way children ran with their parents in the parks, and the way birds perched quietly on fences. She would pause, letting herself imagine she belonged somewhere among the laughter and warmth, even if only for a moment. But the moment always passed, replaced by the sharp reminder that she was alone. One afternoon, she heard about a local festival, a gathering where townspeople celebrated their families and achievements. For most children, it was a time of joy and laughter, but for Aisha, it was a painful reminder of her solitude. Still, curiosity got the better of her. She wanted to see the world beyond the orphanage walls, to feel the energy of a crowd, to imagine what life could be like if she were included. The festival was lively, full of colors, music, and food. Families walked together, children ran with balloons, and laughter filled the air. Aisha lingered at the edge of the crowd, watching carefully, trying not to draw attention. She had hoped, perhaps foolishly, that someone might notice her, that someone might smile and welcome her into their circle. But as the hours passed, she realized that she was invisible. People glanced at her briefly, then turned away. Some whispered about her, calling her an outsider, a girl with no one. Her heart sank as she walked back home that evening, the vibrant colors of the festival fading behind her. She wondered if she would ever be accepted, if she would ever find someone who would care for her just as she was. She thought about giving up, about shrinking further into herself and disappearing entirely. But even in her despair, a small spark refused to die. She could not help but hope, quietly and stubbornly, that somewhere someone might see her, not as an orphan, not as a shadow, but as a person worthy of love. Back at the orphanage, she poured herself a small cup of tea and sat near the window, watching the stars appear in the night sky. The world was vast and full of possibilities, even if it had yet to notice her. She whispered to herself, "Maybe one day someone will." It was a fragile hope, barely audible, but it was enough to keep her moving forward, to keep her dreaming despite the endless rejections. Aisha's life, up to that point, had been marked by loneliness and quiet resilience. She had learned to survive, to find small joys, and to hold on to the tiniest bits of hope. She did not yet know who would enter her life to change everything. But deep down, she sensed that her story was not finished. Something, or someone, was waiting just beyond the horizon, and she had to keep walking, no matter how heavy the burden of being rejected felt. As she lay down that night, the sounds of the orphanage quiet around her, she made a silent promise to herself. She would not let the world's cruelty define her. She would continue to dream, to hope, and to wait for the person who would finally see her for who she truly was. And somewhere, in the quiet corners of the universe, someone was already preparing to do exactly that. Aisha continued her days in quiet routine, her heart still carrying the weight of loneliness. Yet even in her sadness, there was a small flicker of hope that sometimes made her smile, especially when she lost herself in her books or drawings. She never expected anyone outside the orphanage to notice her. Not really. Most of the town looked past her as if she were a shadow. But life has a way of surprising those who least expect it. It was a chilly morning when she first saw him. She had gone to the market to sell some of her small, handmade sketches, hoping to earn a few coins to buy a book she had wanted for weeks. The streets were crowded with people shopping, chatting, and laughing. Aisha set up her little display on the edge of the street, quietly arranging her drawings, her hands shaking slightly from both cold and nervousness. He appeared almost by accident. A tall man, wearing simple but neat clothes, walked slowly through the crowd, observing the people around him with kind eyes. His presence was calm, and somehow he seemed different from the rest of the busy, distracted townspeople. He stopped when he noticed her small display. For a moment he simply looked, as if he were trying to understand who she was. "Did you draw these?" he asked gently, bending slightly to examine the sketches more closely. His voice was soft but carried a warmth that immediately put Aisha at ease. She nodded, surprised that anyone had spoken to her so kindly. "Yes, I made them myself," she replied quietly, her eyes lowering to avoid looking too eager. The man smiled. "They are very good. You have real talent." His words were simple, but they struck her deeply. She had been used to people ignoring her, laughing at her, or dismissing her efforts. To hear genuine praise made her feel as if a small part of her heart had been noticed for the first time. "My name is Imran," he said, extending a hand. Aisha hesitated for a moment before shaking it. She was not used to strangers being friendly, especially not strangers who seemed genuinely kind. "I'm Aisha," she replied softly. From that day on, Imran began noticing her more often. He would walk through the market and make it a point to stop by her sketches. Sometimes he bought a few, saying they reminded him of a story he once loved as a child. Other times he would simply talk to her, asking about her life, her dreams, and what she liked to do. Aisha was cautious at first. She had been disappointed too many times to trust easily. But there was something different about Imran. His patience, his respect, and the way he seemed to see her not as an orphan, but as a person. Days turned into weeks, and their conversations grew longer. Imran would share stories of his own childhood, the lessons he had learned, and the small joys he had found along the way. Aisha listened with fascination. She had never met someone who spoke with such thoughtfulness and care, and gradually she found herself opening up, telling him about her dreams of becoming a teacher, about her love for books and drawing, and about the loneliness she had carried for so long. One day, Aisha confided something she had never told anyone. "Sometimes I feel like I don't belong anywhere," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "No one seems to care if I'm here or not." She looked down at her hands, twisting a loose thread on her sweater. Imran knelt down slightly so that he was at her level. "You do belong," he said firmly. "You belong anywhere you choose to be. And I want you to know something important. You are not alone anymore. Not while I am here." His words were not loud or dramatic, but they carried a weight that Aisha had never experienced. For the first time, she felt a sense of safety, a feeling that someone truly cared for her existence. Winter arrived, and with it came biting cold winds and heavy rains. Life at the orphanage became more difficult, with small fires kept burning to warm the rooms and meals that were simpler than ever. One evening, while Aisha was returning from the market, she caught a cold. At first, she tried to ignore it, thinking she could manage on her own. But the fever came quickly, and soon she could barely walk. Imran noticed her absence the next day, and immediately grew worried. He went to the orphanage, asking the caretakers about her. When they told him she had fallen ill, he did not hesitate. He prepared a small basket of warm soup, herbal tea, and blankets, then went to her room. Aisha tried to protest when he arrived, embarrassed by her condition, but he gently insisted. "You shouldn't be suffering alone," he said simply, placing the basket beside her bed. Let me help." His hands were careful as he adjusted her blanket and made sure she was comfortable. For hours he stayed with her, encouraging her to drink the soup, checking her temperature and telling small stories to keep her spirits up. Aisha had never felt such attention from anyone outside the orphanage before. It was not charity, not pity, it was kindness, sincere and unwavering. By the time she recovered, her feelings for Imran had changed. She realized that she trusted him in a way she had never trusted anyone. She found herself looking forward to his visits, to his words of encouragement, and to the quiet understanding in his eyes. And for the first time, she allowed herself to imagine a life beyond rejection, a life where she could be cared for, valued, and safe. Imran did not rush anything. He never forced her to accept his help or to respond to his kindness in any way. He understood the fragility of her heart, and he treated her with patience and respect. He encouraged her to pursue her dreams, helping her find books and learning materials, and sometimes arranging for small lessons to improve her skills. Slowly, Aisha began to grow in confidence, her shyness and fear replaced by determination and hope. One afternoon, while walking with her through the small park near the orphanage, Imran paused to point out the beauty around them. "See those flowers?" he said, gesturing to the small blooms that had survived the cold. "Even in the harshest winter, they find a way to grow. You are like that too, Aisha. Stronger than you realize, even when the world seems against you." Aisha looked at him, a lump forming in her throat. No one had ever spoken to her like that before. No one had ever believed in her. She felt tears welling in her eyes, but this time they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of being seen, of finally having someone who believed she was worthy. From that moment, Aisha's world began to shift. She still faced challenges, and the town still sometimes ignored or dismissed her. But she no longer walked through life feeling invisible. With Imran by her side, even if only in friendship for now, she felt a sense of belonging that she had never known. She dared to dream bigger, to hope more, and to believe that one day the loneliness that had defined her life might finally end. Evenings became a special time for her. After chores and lessons, she would sit by the window with a cup of warm tea, sometimes joined by Imran, listening to his stories or sharing her own. They talked about everything: books, dreams, hopes, and fears. And though they never spoke of it directly, there was a quiet understanding growing between them, a connection deeper than either could yet name. One rainy evening, as they sat quietly watching the drops race down the window pane, Imran spoke softly. "Aisha, the world can be harsh, and not everyone will be kind to you. But there will always be someone who believes in you. I am here for you, no matter what happens. Remember that." Aisha nodded, her heart swelling with a feeling she could not quite describe. It was trust. It was hope. It was the beginning of something she had always longed for, but had never dared to expect. She realized that her life, so full of rejection and loneliness, was beginning to change. For the first time, she felt that maybe, just maybe, someone could truly care for her, and that it might be possible to have a life filled with kindness and love. As the night settled over the town, Aisha lay in her bed, thinking of Imran's words. She felt a warmth inside her, a small flame of hope that would not be extinguished. Life had been cruel and unkind, but she understood now that a single person's compassion could make all the difference. And as she drifted into sleep, she whispered to herself, "Maybe, finally, my heart will have a place to belong." Little did she know, this was only the beginning. Imran's presence in her life would not only bring her comfort and safety, but would also begin a journey of trust, courage, and love that she had never imagined. And though the world outside still had its challenges, Aisha now carried a quiet confidence, the knowledge that she was not alone, that someone had chosen to see her, and that her life could finally begin to change for the better. Life for Aisha had begun to change in ways she had never imagined. With Imran by her side, she felt safer, seen, and valued for who she was. Her days at the orphanage were still filled with chores, and the town was still indifferent or cruel at times. But now she had someone who believed in her, someone who reminded her that she was not invisible. For the first time, she felt that her dreams could become more than just quiet wishes whispered to herself in the dark. But as her life began to blossom, the town's whispers grew louder. People noticed her growing connection with Imran, and not all of them were happy about it. Some neighbors started gossiping, spreading unkind words about why a respected man like Imran would pay attention to an orphan girl. They called her names behind her back, questioning her worth and spreading doubts about her intentions. Aisha tried not to hear them, tried to tell herself that their words could not harm her now, but the sting of judgment still reached her heart. One afternoon, as she walked through the market carrying a basket of fresh bread for the orphanage, she overheard a group of women talking. "Look at her," one whispered. "Imran spends so much time with that orphan. It's not proper. She has no family, no place in the world. Why would he care?" Another laughed cruelly. "She's nothing but a shadow. He could do so much better." Aisha's hand shook as she held the basket tighter. Her heart pounded, but she forced herself to keep walking. He had grown stronger because of Imran's support, but the world's judgment was a sharp reminder that being noticed could be dangerous in a town that valued status and bloodlines above all else. That evening she confided in Imran, telling him about the whispers and the cruel words. "Why do people have to be so mean?" she asked, tears threatening to spill.
"I can't understand why they think I'm not good enough."
Imran looked at her gently, holding her hands in his. "Aisha, the world does not always see what is right. People fear what they do not understand. They judge what they cannot measure. But their words do not define you. You are more than their opinions. You are strong, talented, and kind, and no one can take that away from you." His words comforted her, but they did not remove the fear. Aisha had spent most of her life alone, and while she was learning to trust and hope, the world's cruelty reminded her how fragile that trust could be. Imran understood this, and he knew that he needed to do more than comfort her. He needed to protect her from the cruelty that lingered just beyond the orphanage walls. The next morning, he arranged to meet her at the small park near the orphanage. The air was crisp, and the sun was just beginning to rise, painting the town in golden light. "Aisha," he said softly, "I want to do something important today. Something that will help you feel safe, not just now, but for the future." She looked at him curiously, unsure what he meant. "I want to give you my name," he said after a pause. "It may sound strange, but it is more than just a name. It is a promise that you are not alone, that someone is willing to stand with you, to protect you, and to support you no matter what." Aisha's eyes widened. She had never imagined anything like this. "Your name?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "But why would you do that for me?" "Because you are worth it," Imran replied simply. "Because I believe in you." Because no child, no matter their past or their circumstances, should ever feel invisible. This is my way of showing you that you belong somewhere, with someone who cares for you. The words wrapped around her heart like a warm blanket. For the first time in her life, Aisha felt truly chosen. She had been rejected by so many, overlooked and dismissed, but here was someone offering her not just kindness, but recognition, protection, and a future. She could not find the words to express the emotions swirling inside her. All she could do was nod, tears spilling down her cheeks, and whisper, "Thank you. Thank you. So much." From that day forward, the town began to see a subtle change. Some still whispered, but their words no longer carried the same weight for Aisha. She walked with her head higher, her steps more confident, because now she knew that someone of importance and integrity had chosen to support her, to believe in her, and to offer her a sense of identity she had never had before. But not everyone could accept this change so easily. Some families in the town continued to gossip, spreading false rumors about Aisha and Imran, questioning their relationship and trying to stir suspicion. They could not understand why a respected man would offer such care to a girl without family. One afternoon, a neighbor approached Imran in the marketplace. "Why are you giving so much attention to her?" the woman demanded. "People are talking. Don't you know she has no place in society?" Imran's response was calm but firm. "She has a place," he said. "She has a name, and she has the right to be treated with dignity and respect. And I will not allow anyone to make her feel otherwise. If you wish to speak about her, speak with kindness or do not speak at all." The woman was taken aback. She did not expect anyone to confront her in such a way. Word spread quickly about Imran's defense of Aisha, and while some were still skeptical, many began to admire his courage and kindness. For Aisha, it was a turning point. She realized that she did not need to fear the town's whispers, because she now had someone who would stand by her and protect her dignity. Life continued with challenges, of course. There were days when Aisha felt unsure of herself, when the old fears of rejection crept back into her heart. But each time, Imran was there. He reminded her of her worth, encouraged her to pursue her dreams, and celebrated her successes no matter how small. And slowly she began to grow, not just in confidence, but in the knowledge that she could face the world with courage, because she was not alone. One day, Imran surprised her with a small ceremony at the orphanage. It was simple, just a gathering of the caretakers and a few children. But it was significant. He officially gave her his family name, explaining to everyone present that Aisha was now a part of his family in name and in heart. The caretakers smiled, some with tears in their eyes, and the children clapped and cheered. For Aisha, it was more than a name. It was a declaration that she belonged somewhere, that someone had chosen her freely, and that her life had begun to change in ways she had never imagined. The act did more than protect her from whispers. It gave her identity, a shield against the harsh judgment of the town. People began to see her differently, not because she had changed, but because someone they respected had chosen to stand by her. And Aisha, who had once walked through life feeling invisible, now walked with a quiet strength, knowing that she had a name, a place, and someone who truly cared. Despite the challenges, Aisha continued to grow. She pursued her education more seriously, studying with a renewed determination, and she explored new opportunities that had once seemed impossible. Imran supported her every step of the way, offering guidance, encouragement, and the kind of belief that no one had ever offered before. Evenings became moments of reflection and joy. Aisha would sit with Imran, sharing her thoughts, dreams, and hopes for the future. Sometimes they would walk through the town, observing life around them, and Imran would point out the small wonders she might have overlooked, the blooming flowers, the laughter of children, the quiet beauty in everyday moments. And each time she felt the warmth of belonging, the comfort of being seen, and the strength that came from knowing she was loved. Yet, Aisha never forgot the loneliness that had once defined her life. It was a memory that reminded her of how precious kindness and trust could be. She understood that not everyone would change or accept her, but she no longer feared their judgment. She had found something far greater, someone who believed in her, someone who had chosen to protect her and give her a place in the world. And that knowledge gave her courage to face whatever challenges might come next. As the weeks turned into months, Aisha's life transformed. The orphan who had once wandered through life unnoticed now carried herself with dignity, hope, and quiet strength. She still had dreams, still faced moments of fear, but she had Imran's unwavering support, a family name, and a heart that had finally begun to heal. One quiet evening, as they sat on the porch of the orphanage watching the sunset, Imran spoke softly. "Aisha, life will not always be easy, and there will be times when people will doubt you, judge you, or try to bring you down. But remember this, you are never alone. I will always stand by you, and you have the strength within yourself to face anything." Aisha looked at him, her heart full of gratitude and trust. She knew that she had found more than just a protector. She had found someone who truly believed in her, someone who had given her hope when the world had tried to take it away. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, she whispered to herself, "I am not alone. I am seen. I am loved." And in that moment, Aisha understood that her life, once filled with rejection and loneliness, had begun a new chapter, one of hope, belonging, and the quiet promise of love that would guide her through whatever challenges lay ahead. Aisha woke up that morning with a sense of quiet determination. Her life had changed so much over the past months, yet she knew there was still a journey ahead. The orphanage felt different now, less like a place that reminded her of loneliness, and more like a space where she could grow, learn, and dream. She had Imran's guidance and support, and for the first time she truly felt that she belonged somewhere. The first order of business was school. Aisha had always loved learning, but now her focus was sharper. With Imran's help, she had arranged access to additional books and private lessons to strengthen her skills. She had set a personal goal. She wanted to graduate with confidence and knowledge so that no one could ever doubt her abilities or dismiss her again. Every morning she would rise early, study by candlelight if necessary, and tackle her lessons with dedication. Even when her eyes grew tired and her hands cramped from writing, she reminded herself that this effort was her way of taking control of her life. The town still carried whispers, but Aisha no longer feared them. People had noticed the change in her. She walked with her head held high, speaking with clarity and confidence, and treating everyone with respect, regardless of how they had treated her in the past. Slowly, many began to admire her determination. Even those who had once spread rumors began to soften, seeing that she was no longer the timid, invisible girl they had ignored. Imran continued to support her quietly, never pushing too hard, never overshadowing her efforts. He celebrated her achievements in small, meaningful ways. A thoughtful word, a new book for her studies, a quiet evening walk discussing her dreams. His presence was steady, unwavering, and kind, giving her the confidence she needed to believe in herself fully. One afternoon, Aisha was invited to speak at a small gathering at the community center, sharing her story and her dreams with other children and families. She was nervous at first. Public speaking had always been a challenge, especially for someone who had spent most of her life being ignored. But when she saw Imran smiling gently in the crowd, her heart steadied, and she realized she had a voice worth hearing. She began to speak softly, sharing her journey, the loneliness, the rejection, the struggles at the orphanage, and finally the kindness and support she had received. Her words were simple but powerful, carrying the emotions she had felt for so long. She spoke of hope, of believing in oneself, and of the courage to accept help when it came. By the end of her speech, the room was quiet, then filled with applause. Aisha felt a warmth in her chest she had never experienced before, the feeling of being understood, valued, and respected. The recognition was not about fame or praise. It was about the acknowledgement that she had survived, grown, and thrived despite the odds. That evening, walking home with Imran, she realized that her confidence had grown not just from his support, but from the realization that she had the strength within herself all along. Imran had helped her find it, but it was her courage and determination that had carried her this far. Life continued to improve in small, meaningful ways. Aisha began tutoring younger children at the orphanage, sharing her love of reading and learning with them. She found joy in helping others, knowing exactly how it felt to need guidance and encouragement. The children adored her, and she found a sense of fulfillment in giving them the same hope and support that had once been given to her. Imran, always quietly supportive, watched with pride as Aisha blossomed into a young woman of strength, intelligence, and compassion. Their bond had grown deeper, no longer just about care and protection, but about trust, respect, and shared dreams. While Aisha still carried memories of rejection, they no longer defined her. She had a name, a place, and someone who had chosen her freely, and that choice had given her the courage to shape her own destiny. One evening, as they sat by the river watching the sun dip below the horizon, Aisha turned to Imran. "I never imagined life could be like this," she said softly. "I thought I would always be alone, invisible, forgotten. But now, I feel alive. I feel like I belong." Imran smiled, his eyes warm and steady. "You do belong, Aisha, and you always have. I just helped you see it." He paused, then added, "And remember, no matter what challenges come, you have the strength to face them. You are not alone." The months turned into years, and Aisha continued to grow. She completed her education with excellent results and began working with children in need, helping them find hope and confidence, just as she had. Her story became an inspiration to many in the town, showing that kindness, determination, and belief in oneself could overcome even the harshest beginnings. The town's attitude toward her shifted as well. Those who had once whispered and judged began to respect her, not out of fear or obligation, but because they saw her courage, intelligence, and compassion. Aisha had not only transformed her own life, but had quietly changed the hearts of those around her. Despite all her achievements, Aisha remained humble. She never forgot the orphanage, the lonely streets, or the cold nights when she had felt invisible. She visited often, helping the children there in small ways, teaching, reading stories, or simply offering a kind word. She knew that even small acts of support could change someone's life, just as Imran's support had changed hers. Imran remained by her side, never seeking recognition or reward. His role was simple yet profound. He had chosen to see her, to protect her, and to give her a chance at a life she had never imagined. And in return, he gained her trust, friendship, and, eventually, a deep and lasting bond built on mutual respect and care. One day, Aisha received a letter from a distant city offering her a position to work with a children's foundation. The opportunity was exciting but also daunting. Leaving her town meant stepping into the unknown, far from the street she had known all her life. He turned to Imran, seeking guidance. "You are ready," he said simply. "You have the skills, the courage, and the heart to make a difference. Go, share your light with the world. I will always be here supporting you, no matter the distance." Aisha felt tears welling up, but they were tears of gratitude, joy, and anticipation. For the first time in her life, she realized that she could truly fly, not because the world had finally accepted her, but because she had been given the tools, support, and belief to trust herself. She hugged Imran tightly, whispering, thank you for everything. The day she left for the new city was filled with a mixture of excitement and nostalgia. She waved goodbye to the orphanage, the streets that had once seemed lonely and harsh, and the people she had known. But she carried with her something far more valuable than memories. She carried her confidence, her identity, and the knowledge that she belonged somewhere. In the city, Aisha's work flourished. She helped children who, like her, had felt invisible, abandoned, or overlooked. She shared her story with them, not for sympathy, but to show them that life could change, that kindness could be found, and that they had the power to shape their own future. Her dedication and compassion touched many lives, and she found fulfillment in ways she had never imagined. Aisha always made time for Imran. They wrote letters, called each other, and met whenever possible. Their bond remained strong, built on years of trust, shared experiences, and unwavering support. Aisha had learned that love and care were not always loud or dramatic. They could be quiet, steady, and life-changing. Years later, Aisha returned to her hometown for a special celebration at the orphanage. Children and adults alike gathered to honor her work and the journey she had taken. She spoke to them, sharing her story, emphasizing the power of hope, courage, and kindness. As she finished, the room erupted in applause, but her eyes searched for Imran in the crowd. When she saw him, standing quietly with a proud smile, she felt a deep sense of gratitude and joy. She approached him after the event, her heart full. "I couldn't have done any of this without you," she said softly. "You gave me a name, a place, and the courage to believe in myself. You changed my life." Imran smiled, placing a hand gently on hers. "You did it yourself, Aisha. I only helped you see the strength that was always inside you." And in that moment, Aisha understood that life had given her more than she could have ever imagined. She had overcome rejection, loneliness, and doubt. She had grown into a strong, compassionate, and confident woman, and she had learned that a single person's belief in her could change everything. But ultimately, it was her own courage and heart that allowed her to soar. As the sun set behind the hills, casting golden light across the town, Aisha and Imran stood together, quietly reflecting on the journey that had brought them here. The orphan girl who had once been invisible, rejected, and alone, now had a name, a home, a purpose, and a heart full of hope. The man who had chosen to see her had given her more than protection. He had given her the gift of belonging, and with it, a life filled with possibilities. And for the first time in her life, Aisha smiled without fear, without doubt, without loneliness. She was seen. She was loved. She had finally found her place in the world.